The betrayal at Nexus Station. The stars never looked so cold as they did through the viewport of Nexus Station. Ambassador Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, watching the distant blue dot that was Earth, barely visible among the countless points of light. In 6 hours, she would either secure humanity's future or witness its doom. Nexus Station hung in neutral space, a massive construct of gleaming metal and energy shields that served as the galaxy's diplomatic heart. Representatives from dozens of species moved through its corridors, but today only two mattered: humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. Sarah adjusted her formal diplomatic robes, the deep blue fabric bearing Earth's silver insignia. At 42, she had negotiated treaties with 7 different alien species, but none as crucial as this. The Zephyrian Empire had systematically destroyed 12 human colonies in the past year, claiming they were cleaning up unauthorized settlements. Each attack had been swift, brutal, and complete. No survivors, no warnings, no mercy. Ambassador Chen, a voice called from behind. She turned to see Captain Marcus Rivera approaching, his military uniform crisp despite having just disembarked from his ship. Rivera commanded the stealth vessel Defiance, one of Earth's most advanced warships, though it seemed insignificant compared to the Zephyrian dreadnoughts anchored nearby. Captain. Sarah nodded. I wasn't expecting military escort today. Rivera's dark eyes were serious. Admiral Walsh insisted. These negotiations are too important to leave unguarded. He paused, studying her face. How are you feeling about today? Sarah turned back to the viewport. Terrified, if I'm honest. The Zephyrians hold all the cards. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their fleet could glass Earth's surface in days. All I have are words. Sometimes words are the most powerful weapons we have, Rivera said quietly. My grandmother used to say that humans don't win through strength alone. We win because we refuse to give up, even when the odds are impossible. A chime echoed through the station's corridors. All diplomatic representatives to Conference Hall Alpha. Negotiations will commence in 30 minutes. Sarah straightened her shoulders. Time to see if your grandmother was right, Captain. The conference hall was a marvel of neutral architecture, designed to make no species feel disadvantaged. The circular chamber featured a transparent dome showing the stars above, while holographic displays provided real-time translation for dozens of languages. Representatives from the Galactic Mediation Council took their positions around the outer ring, while the main negotiation table dominated the center. Sarah entered to find the Zephyrian delegation already seated. High Executor Thys, their lead representative, was a towering figure even by Zephyrian standards. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the chamber's lights, creating rainbow patterns across his angular features. Behind him sat 3 military advisors, their biomechanical implants marking them as members of the Zephyrian war caste. Ambassador Chen. Thys spoke in perfect English, his voice carrying the electronic undertones of his species' communication enhancers. How refreshing to finally meet Earth's chief diplomat in person. High Executor, Sarah replied, taking her seat across from him. I hope today marks the beginning of a peaceful resolution to our conflicts. Thys's head tilted in what might have been amusement. Conflict. Is that what humans call the systematic removal of illegal settlements from sovereign Zephyrian space? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Sarah had reviewed the territorial claims exhaustively. The destroyed colonies had been established in previously unclaimed systems, following all galactic settlement protocols. But the Zephyrians had retroactively claimed those systems, then acted as judge and executioner. Those were legitimate human settlements, Sarah said calmly. Families, scientists, farmers seeking new homes among the stars. They posed no threat to your empire. They posed a threat to galactic order, one of the military advisors interjected. Humans breed like parasites, consume resources without regard for balance, and spread their primitive culture wherever they go. The galaxy is better served by containing your species to your home system. Sarah felt her blood pressure rising, but forced her voice to remain steady. Captain Marcus Rivera's reconnaissance data shows your fleet's destroyed civilian evacuation ships. Children, High Executor, your forces killed children. For a moment, something flickered in Thiss's crystalline eyes, but it passed quickly. Regrettable casualties of necessary action. Perhaps if humans learned to follow established law rather than pushing boundaries, such tragedies could be avoided. The mediation began in earnest. For 3 hours, Sarah presented evidence, legal precedents, and appeals for basic humanitarian consideration. The Zephyrian delegation countered every point with cold legal technicalities and veiled threats. The other council members watched with the detached interest of species who had seen countless worlds rise and fall. During a recess, Sarah contacted Captain Rivera through her secure communicator. "Marcus, this isn't working. They're not negotiating in good faith. Every compromise I offer, they reject. Every concession they demand would effectively end human expansion forever." Rivera's voice was tight with frustration. "What do you need from me, Sarah? Be ready. I think this is going to end badly." When negotiations resumed, High Executor Thiss stood and activated a holographic display. The Zephyrian Empire has prepared a final offer for the human delegation. The terms appeared in stark text above the table. Complete withdrawal from all systems beyond Sol. Acceptance of Zephyrian oversight of human space activities. Mandatory population controls. Surrender of all military vessels above frigate class. Sarah stared at the terms in disbelief. "This isn't a peace treaty. This is surrender. It is survival," Thiss replied. "Accept these terms, and humanity will be permitted to exist under proper guidance. Reject them and face the consequences of your arrogance." "I need time to consult with my government," Sarah said. "Time is a luxury we no longer provide." Thiss stood. "You have 1 hour to accept, or this negotiation ends permanently." Sarah activated her emergency beacon, sending a coded message to Earth. The response came within minutes, directly from President Martinez. "Negotiate if possible, but never surrender human freedom. We stand behind you completely." When the session reconvened, Sarah stood before the assembled delegates. The chamber had filled with observers from dozens of species, all watching to see how this confrontation would resolve. "The United Earth government cannot accept terms that would effectively enslave humanity," she announced. "We propose alternative conditions that guarantee both species security while preserving our fundamental rights to expansion and self-determination." High Executor Thiss didn't even look at her proposed counterterms. Instead, he gestured to his military advisors. "The human delegation has rejected peace. This negotiation is concluded." "Wait," Sarah called out. "There must be middle ground. The cost of war will be devastating for both our peoples." Thiss turned back to her, and for the first time, Sarah saw something terrible in his crystalline eyes. Not anger, not hatred, but complete indifference. "War. Ambassador Chen, there will be no war. Wars are fought between equals." The High Executor's hand moved to a device at his belt. Sarah realized with horror that it wasn't a ceremonial ornament, it was a weapon. The safety protocols of Nexus Station should have prevented any arms from entering the diplomatic chambers, but the Zephyrians had clearance as a member species of the Galactic Council. "This negotiation ends here," Thiss announced to the chamber. "Let this serve as a lesson to all species who would challenge established galactic order." The energy beam struck Sarah in the chest before she could move. The world exploded into pain and then darkness. Her last conscious thought was of Earth, that distant blue dot, and whether it would survive what was coming. Captain Rivera was monitoring the negotiations from his ship when the emergency signals began screaming across all channels. The feed from the conference chamber showed chaos. Delegates fleeing. Security forces surrounding a fallen figure in blue diplomatic robes, and High Executor Thiss calmly walking the way while his guards held back anyone who might interfere. "Sarah," Rivera whispered, his hands clenching into fists. The medical readouts were clear. Ambassador Sarah Chen, Earth's voice among the stars, was dead. Within minutes, communication arrays across human space lit up with emergency transmissions. Admiral Catherine Walsh appeared on Rivera's command screen, her weathered face grim with determination. "Captain Rivera, you're now a ranking officer in the Nexus sector. What's your assessment?" "They murdered her in cold blood, Admiral. In front of the entire Galactic Council. They're sending a message that humanity doesn't deserve a seat at the table." "Then we'll have to make our own table," Walsh replied. "Your orders are simple, Captain. You have complete operational freedom. Show them what happens when they push humanity too far." Rivera looked at his crew. 12 of Earth's finest officers who had signed up to explore the stars, not wage war. But war had found them anyway. "Ma'am, what about the rules of engagement?" Admiral Walsh's smile was sharp as a blade. "There are no rules anymore, Captain. They killed our ambassador during peace talks. As of this moment, we consider ourselves at war with the Zephyrian Empire. You are authorized to use any means necessary." "Understood, Admiral. What about the other Council species?" "Let them watch. Let them see what humanity does to those who mistake our diplomacy for weakness." The transmission ended, leaving Rivera alone with his thoughts and his anger. He turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Zora Park. "Set course for the Zephyrian military depot at Cronus VY. Full stealth approach." "Sir, that's a heavily fortified installation. We're one ship against an entire battle group." Rivera's voice was cold as space itself. "Then we better make it count. Load our entire complement of quantum torpedoes. It's time the galaxy learned that when you kill Earth's ambassadors, Earth sends soldiers." The Defiant slipped away from Nexus Station like a shadow, invisible to sensors, and undetected by the Zephyrian ships that still lingered nearby. Behind them, the diplomatic corps scrambled to contain the crisis, but Rivera knew it was too late for containment. Humanity had tried to join the galactic community through words and treaties. They had been answered with murder and contempt. Now it was time for a different kind of diplomacy, the kind delivered at the speed of light by weapons designed by a species that had crawled up from a world where everything tried to kill them. The stars ahead looked different now, not cold and distant, but like targets waiting to be lit up by human fire. Sarah Chen had been right about one thing. This day would determine humanity's future, but not in the way anyone had expected. As the Defiance accelerated toward its target, Rivera allowed himself one moment of grief for the woman who had believed words could save them all. Then he focused on the task ahead. The Zephyrians wanted to see what humans did when diplomacy failed. They were about to find out. The reckoning unleashed. The Zephyrian military depot at Cronus VI hung in space like a metallic spider, its arms bristling with defense platforms and docking bays filled with warships. Captain Marcus Rivera studied the tactical display as the Defiance drifted silently through the asteroid field, invisible to enemy sensors thanks to their experimental stealth coating. 16 heavy cruisers, 8 battleships, and a command dreadnought, reported Lieutenant Commander Park, plus automated defense grids and patrol squadrons. Conservative estimate puts their firepower at 40 times our own. Rivera nodded grimly. Good thing we're not planning a fair fight. He activated the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. By now you've all heard about Ambassador Chen's murder. The Zephyrians think they can intimidate humanity into submission through fear. They're about to learn why that was a mistake." In the engineering section, Chief Petty Officer Tommy Brooks was making final adjustments to their secret weapon. 3 months ago, human scientists had achieved a breakthrough in quantum torpedo design, weapons that could phase through conventional shields by existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The technology was experimental, untested in real combat, but Rivera had volunteered the Defiance as the testing platform. "Brooks, status report." Rivera's voice came through the comm. "Quantum torpedoes are armed and stable, Captain. But I'll be honest, sir. We've never fired all 8 at once. The power drain could knock out our main systems. "Then we'd better make sure we don't miss," Rivera replied. The Defiance emerged from the asteroid field like a ghost materializing from shadows. For 30 seconds, they remained undetected, closing distance at maximum impulse. Then the Zephyrian sensors finally registered their presence, and chaos erupted across the enemy formation. "Multiple contacts launching from the depot," Park announced. "They're scrambling everything they have." "Fire," Rivera commanded. 8 quantum torpedoes streaked across space, each one flickering between dimensions as they approached their targets. The Zephyrian point defense systems opened fire, filling space with energy beams and interceptor missiles. But you can't shoot what exists in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The first torpedoes struck the command dreadnought amidships, phasing through its shields as if they weren't there. The explosion tore through 17 decks, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. The second and third torpedoes hit a heavy cruiser, breaking its back and sending both halves spinning away in different directions. Within 90 seconds, 6 Zephyrian warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The remaining fleet turned toward the Defiance with fury, but Rivera was already moving. "Emergency jump now," he ordered. The Defiance vanished in a flash of twisted spacetime, leaving behind confused enemies and a depot that would never again serve as a symbol of Zephyrian military might. Light years away, Admiral Catherine Walsh watched the tactical reports flooding in from across human space. The destruction at Cronus VI had sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire, but their response was swift and brutal. 3 more human colonies had been obliterated in retaliation, their populations numbering in the hundreds of thousands. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the Zephyrian High Command. They're giving us 72 hours to hand over Captain Rivera and accept their original terms, or they'll begin systematic bombardment of Earth itself." Walsh studied the star charts displaying Zephyrian fleet movements. Massive formations were converging on human space from multiple directions, more firepower than humanity had ever faced. "Contact all ship commanders," she ordered. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Operation Prometheus had been humanity's most classified military project. While the Zephyrians and other species relied on overwhelming firepower and technological superiority, human strategists had taken a different approach. They studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and developed weapons specifically designed to exploit those vulnerabilities. The first phase launched simultaneously from 12 different systems. Human stealth ships, no larger than fighters but packed with revolutionary eye-guided munitions, slipped past Zephyrian patrols and struck at infrastructure targets. Power plants, communication relays, supply depots, all vanished in precisely coordinated strikes that left no evidence of human involvement. Captain Rivera, meanwhile, had received new orders that changed everything. The Defiance was to rendezvous with a classified research station in the Vega system, where humanity's greatest secret was waiting. Dr. Elena Vasquez had worked on the Prometheus project for 8 years, ever since xenobiologists had first obtained samples of Zephyrian neural tissue. What they discovered revolutionized human understanding of their enemies. "The Zephyrian collective consciousness isn't magic," she explained to Rivera as they walked through the research facility. "It's quantum-entangled neural networks that allow instantaneous communication across vast distances. But like any network, it has vulnerabilities." She led him to a chamber containing humanity's answer to Zephyrian superiority, a device no larger than a briefcase, humming with contained energy. "We call it the Neural Cascade Generator. It sends a specific quantum frequency that overloads Zephyrian neural networks. In practical terms, it can shut down their ships, disable their soldiers, or even disrupt their collective decision-making processes." Rivera stared at the device. "Why haven't we used this before?" "Because it's never been tested on a large scale, and because using it requires getting within point-blank range of enemy formations. It's essentially a suicide mission." Rivera's smile was grim. Good thing humanity specializes in impossible missions. While the Defiance prepared for its final assault, unexpected allies emerged from across the galaxy. The hegemony of free traders, a coalition of merchant species who had suffered under Zephyrian economic oppression, offered intelligence and supply routes. The Crystari Rebellion, survivors of a species the Zephyrians had nearly exterminated, provided advanced sensor technology. Most surprising was Zara Vex, a Zephyrian intelligence officer who contacted Rivera through encrypted channels. "Not all of my people support this war," she transmitted from a hidden location. High Executor Thys represents the worst of our warrior caste, those who see other species as inferior by definition. There are Zephyrians who believe cooperation is possible, but we've been silenced by fear. "What are you proposing?" Rivera asked. "I can get you into the Zephyrian Command Nexus. Their entire fleet network runs through a central coordination hub. If your weapon can disrupt that hub, their military effectiveness drops by 70%. It was an incredible risk. Trusting an enemy officer went against every military protocol. But Rivera had learned that sometimes you had to take impossible chances to achieve the impossible. The final battle began at the edge of the Sol system, where the largest Zephyrian armada in history dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Over 300 warships, including their legendary planet killer dreadnoughts, arranged themselves in perfect formation for the systematic destruction of humanity's homeworld. High Executor Thys stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. The blue world looked so fragile, so insignificant. In a few hours, it would be nothing but molten slag, and the human problem would be solved forever. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting a single human vessel approaching. It appears to be the ship responsible for the Cronus VI attack." Thys's crystalline features showed amusement. "Captain Rivera thinks to face our entire fleet with one ship. How typically human. Brave, stupid, and ultimately futile. Let him come. I want to destroy him personally." The Defiance approached the Zephyrian armada at maximum acceleration, its hull glowing from atmospheric friction as Rivera pushed the engines beyond safe limits. On the surface, it looked like a desperate last stand. In reality, it was the most precisely planned military operation in human history. "Neural cascade generator is armed and ready," Dr. Vasquez reported from the engineering section. "But remember, we need to be within 5,000 kilometers of their command ship for maximum effect. And survive long enough to activate it," Rivera added grimly. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire when the Defiance reached weapons range. Hundreds of energy beams converged on the small human ship, but Rivera had one final surprise. The Defiance's experimental hull coating didn't just provide stealth. It could briefly shift the ship into parallel dimensions, allowing it to phase through incoming fire. For 30 seconds, the Defiance danced between realities, appearing and disappearing as it closed distance with the enemy flagship. Zephyrian gunners fired at empty space while their target materialized just long enough to launch another volley of quantum torpedoes. "We're losing hull integrity," Park reported as the dimensional shifting began to tear the ship apart. "The phase generators are overloading. Hold together just a little longer," Rivera urged his ship. At 2,000 kilometers from the Zephyrian flagship, Rivera activated the neural cascade generator. The device sent out a pulse of quantum energy specifically tuned to Zephyrian neural frequencies. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the enemy fleet, ships went dead in space as their crews collapsed. The collective consciousness that coordinated their actions dissolved into chaos. Some vessels began firing randomly. Others drifted helplessly, and several collided with their neighbors as automated systems failed. High Executor Thys felt the cascade hit his neural implants like liquid fire. For the first time in his life, he was truly alone in his own mind, cut off from the collective that had guided every decision. Around him, his bridge crew writhed in agony as their enhanced brains struggled to process individual thought. But the neural cascade generator had burned out the Defiance's power systems. The ship hung motionless in space, defenseless as Zephyrian vessels that had resisted the pulse moved in for the kill. That's when the rest of Operation Prometheus revealed itself. From hidden positions throughout the solar system, human ships decloaked and opened fire. They had been waiting in stealth for weeks, using the Defiance's assault as the signal to begin humanity's real counterattack. Quantum torpedoes, neural cascade weapons, and experimental beam arrays struck the crippled Zephyrian fleet from every direction. The battle that followed lasted 6 hours and changed the balance of galactic power forever. When it ended, the surviving Zephyrian forces were fleeing toward their home systems, their military supremacy shattered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. 3 months later, Captain Rivera stood in the rebuilt conference hall of Nexus Station, wearing his dress uniform, and watching as Admiral Walsh signed the Treaty of Turan Recognition. The Galactic Council had formally acknowledged humanity as a sovereign power, with full rights to expansion and self-defense. The Zephyrian Empire has agreed to pay reparations for the colonies they destroyed, Walsh reported to the assembled delegates. They've also agreed to limit their military expansion and accept neutral arbitration for future territorial disputes. High Executor Thys, his crystalline features now scarred by neural cascade damage, stood with the remnants of his delegation. "This treaty is acceptable to the Zephyrian Empire," he said in a voice that no longer carried electronic enhancement. "We acknowledge that we underestimated human capabilities." Rivera caught Zara Vex's eye across the chamber. The Zephyrian intelligence officer had become an advocate for peace within her own government, leading a faction that sought cooperation rather than domination. Her courage had made the treaty possible. As the ceremony concluded, Rivera walked to the viewport where Ambassador Sarah Chen had stood months before. Earth was still a distant blue dot, but it no longer looked fragile. It looked like home, a world that had faced extinction and emerged stronger. She would have been proud, Admiral Walsh said, joining him at the window. She would have found a way to avoid the war entirely, Rivera replied. Sarah always believed words were more powerful than weapons. Maybe they are, Walsh mused. After all, it was her words that convinced us to fight back. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no, we won't surrender, we won't submit, and we won't let you erase us from the galaxy. Rivera nodded, thinking of all the species across the galaxy who had lived under Zephyrian oppression for centuries. Humanity's victory had inspired rebellions on dozens of worlds, as other races realized that the Empire wasn't invincible after all. The stars no longer looked cold. They looked like opportunities, new worlds to explore, new species to befriend, new chapters in the ever-expanding story of humanity's journey among the stars. And at the heart of that story was a simple truth that the galaxy was still learning. Never underestimate a species that refuses to give up. The war was over, but humanity's greatest adventures were just beginning.